This is Pastor Tami with HungryHeartsForGod.com. Welcome to Can You Hear Me Now? 7 Ways to Recognize the Voice of God. In this session, we'll be reviewing distinguishing factor number 4, motivating force. God and I were in the midst of a dialogue that had lasted for months while He sought to reveal His grace to me and what it meant to walk according to the counsel of His Spirit instead of the counsel of the flesh. Being I'm a little hard-headed, He was really having to work at it. One day I challenged Him on something He had said the day before, and our conversation went something like this. Lord, you said that your grace is just getting started when I know better than to do what I'm doing. So why do I keep hearing, shame on you, Tami, you know better? He said, that's not me. I said, seriously? He said, seriously. So you're not up there wagging your finger and scolding me? No, Tami, I'm not wagging my finger and scolding you. There is no shame or condemnation to those who walk according to the counsel of my Spirit. Right, because they, the ones walking according to the counsel of your Spirit, are not doing anything wrong. No, Tami, there's no shame or condemnation because they are listening to the counsel of my Spirit afterwards. After the wrongdoing. No shame or condemnation afterwards? No shame or condemnation afterwards. Even when they do something they know they shouldn't be doing? Yes, Tami, even when you do something you know you shouldn't be doing. But this can't be right. Tami, condemnation shoves and pushes from the outside and produces shame. The counsel of my Spirit woos and draws you into my righteousness, creating a conviction and a persuasion from the inside. Lord, I sense something powerful trying to happen in me, but there's a lot of confusion in my head right now. Truth is making you free. If this is truth, Lord, give me an example of a time when your Spirit drew me back into your righteousness without condemnation or shame. He said, yesterday, Macy's dressing room, clothes all over the floor that people hadn't put back on hangers and hung on the rack as the sign requested. For the first few minutes, you stood on the clothes like everyone else had. And then, even though you were in a hurry and it wasn't your mess, you took the time to put the clothes back on a hanger and put them on the rack outside the dressing room. Why? Well, I didn't like the way it made me feel. I didn't want to be known as someone who would do that sort of thing. Tami, that was me. That was my Spirit in you saying, I don't like the way this makes me feel. I don't want to be known as someone who would do this sort of thing. Truth is, you did stand on the clothes for a while. Did it ever cross your mind to feel guilty or condemned for those few minutes of disrespect? No. And then you even went on to give the customer service clerk a hard time about not giving you a full refund on the skirt you bought last week because the price had already been reduced. Afterwards, on your way home, you made a conscious decision to never do something like that again. Why? Again, I didn't like the way it made me feel. I didn't want to be known as someone who would take their frustration out on the poor clerk who was just following company policy. Tami, that was me. That was my Spirit in you not liking the way it felt and not wanting to be known as someone who would take their frustration out on the poor clerk who was just following company policy. Oh, wow. And there was no guilt, no shame, no condemnation. No shame, Tami. Only grace and a drawing into my righteousness. The motivating force behind the counsel of the enemy is shame and condemnation. Romans 8:38 and 39 tells us that nothing can separate us from the love of God. So the enemy gets us to separate ourselves from our Creator by invoking feelings of shame and condemnation. Shame and condemnation make us want to hide from God and from others. He pushes and shoves at us from the outside. It's an external form of control and a very effective tool. He used it in the garden to get Adam and Eve to hide from the voice of God, and he's still using it today. Question: if you have a thought that makes you feel ashamed or condemned, what can you know? What is the truth? Truth is, whenever a thought makes me feel ashamed or condemned, I can know that I am listening to the counsel of the enemy. The motivating force behind the counsel of the Spirit is love, producing a conviction, a persuasion, a desire to do right. He woos and draws as us rather than pushing and shoving at us. He says things like, I don't want to be known as someone who would do this sort of thing. It's an internal form of control. The motivating force behind the counsel of the flesh is self-criticism and controlling guilt. There is a guilt of compunction, but this guilt is a controlling guilt. It's the kind one person uses to manipulate another person into doing what they want them to do. I think we all have at least one person in our life like this, right? The flesh is a master manipulator. Ego thinks if it criticizes and guilts us enough, we will become that better person. The counsel of the flesh is an external form of control, confining and restricting, somewhat like a girdle. It attempts to pull it all in and make us look good from the outside. Question: if you have a thought that is self-critical or uses controlling guilt to try to manipulate you, what can you know? What is the truth? Truth is, whenever I have a thought that is self-critical or uses controlling guilt to try to manipulate me, I can know that I am listening to the counsel of the flesh. So, what has the condemning and shame-producing counsel of the enemy been saying to you? What has the self-critical and guilt-producing counsel of the flesh been saying to try to motivate you? Remember, recognition and awareness empower us to choose whether or not to buy into and believe the counsel we just heard. So take a moment to listen for the loving, wooing, drawing counsel of the Spirit by asking, Lord, what is your truth? In closing, I'd like to remind you of the two opportunities I created to support you on your journey to recognize the voice of God. Both are free. One is a private Facebook community, and the other is a weekly Ask Pastor Tami call. If you're interested in either one of these, email Pastor Tami, Tami, at hungryhearts4god, hungryhearts, the numeral 4, God.com, and I'll send you the necessary information. And when you're ready, meet me over at Can You Hear Me Now? 7 Ways to Recognize the Voice of God, distinguishing factor number 5. Favorite words and phrases. You are going to love this one. This is Pastor Tami, inspiring hungry hearts around the world to pursue His presence and purpose by learning to distinguish God's voice from the counsel of the flesh and the counsel of the enemy. Until next time, God bless.